Sign up for free Stratfor Intelligence. Simply enter your email address to receive 2 free reports each week.
The Egyptian Air Force chief said on Thursday that Egypt has been patrolling its eastern border with Israel without Israeli consent. We can expect this kind of rhetoric to increase as Egypt tries to contain growing resentment against the country's military leadership. But the reality of the situation, at least for now, is that Egypt and Israel are actually cooperating very closely out of strategic necessity. Egypt's Air Force chief commented on the recent increase of Egyptian troops in the Sinai, saying that the Sinai is our land, and we don't need to ask permission to increase forces in our land. The general went on to say that Egyptian warplanes don't need to ask permission from Israel to conduct patrols along its eastern border with Israel. This is yet another sign of the Egyptian military finding itself on the defensive in the battle of perceptions in its own country. The Egyptian military is in a very tough spot currently. Remember that the military was very conscious in allowing demonstrations to take place at the start of the year in order to remove Mubarak and destroy his succession plans. But the military also did so with the anticipation of absorbing the cost of breaking open a political stalemate in the country. They now have to give the appearance that they're following through with its promise of elections while doing everything it can to maintain the status quo. That status quo entails having the military remain as the vanguard of the state, while the political opposition remains far too weak and divided to do anything meaningful. So if you can understand the military's core imperatives, then you can also understand why the military's pledge for free and fair elections is likely a flimsy one. Major security incidents like the sectarian riots that broke out in Cairo this past Sunday could be used by the military to justify greater crackdowns and a suspension of elections at any point in time. Egypt's various opposition factions are starting to pick up on this trend and are making more visible their growing disillusionment with the military regime. You can see this simply by walking through the streets of Cairo and taking note of the fresh anti-military graffiti in Tahrir Square, and taking note of people talking on the streets about how the military is playing games when it comes to elections and is unjustified in cracking down harshly on protesters. On the other side of the coin, there are a significant number of Egyptians, particularly among the elite, who look at the opposition in pure disgust and regard the military as the true savior of the state, and are looking to the military to reimpose order so that they can resume business as usual and start making money again to restore the economy. The Egyptian military is very conscious of its perception in the streets, and so by engaging in rhetoric that portrays the military as the protector of the state, capable of acting independently of Israel and patrolling the borders in the east, the Egyptian military is trying to fend off criticism that it's more concerned with maintaining its own power than it is concerned about the livelihood of Egyptians on the street. Such rhetoric may have limited value in the long term, however. There's no question that Egypt and Israel are working very closely these days in trying to secure the Sinai border. Israel is growing more and more vulnerable by the day, given the growing level of political uncertainty to the west in Egypt and to the north in Syria. This is also part of the reason why Israel decided to absorb the political cost in agreeing to a prisoner transfer with Hamas to secure the release of Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit. Israel needs to show its populace that it's going to stand by its soldiers during these hard times. It also gives the Egyptian military regime the chance to demonstrate its influence in mediating between the Palestinians and the Israelis. So far, that does not appear to be an immediate concern. The Egyptian military is still holding strong, and Israel can afford to turn a deaf ear to the anti-Israeli rhetoric that the military feels it needs to engage in order to tame its domestic base. But there's also no question that the Egyptian military has not been under this much stress since the 73 Yom Kippur War, and Israel has to be thinking about the day that such rhetoric could transform into action. This is a scenario when Israel usually reverts to a more preemptive posture in handling its national security. So while Israel may agree nervously right now to an increase of Egyptian troops in the Sinai, there may come a day much further down the line when Israel cannot fully count on the military in Egypt as the firm guarantor of the Egyptian state.